but I just want to give everybody an update. So just to remind folks, if you'd like to see the status of where we are, we still have this project board. You can get to that by going to the, my mouse, there we go. You can get to that by going to the MPI issues repository on GitHub, same place we have all of our issues. Click on projects, click on MPI 4.0 ratification. What this is everything that's marked with the label MPI 4.0 I threw in here. There are a few things that I know that are in progress. There are some things over here in this to-do column that are probably also in progress, and I'm just not aware of the status of everything. And then there's lots of things in this to-do column that we will obviously not be finishing for MPI 4.0, given that we've already gone past our sort of deadline for getting everything in. And that's okay. There's a lot of things that can easily slip to 4.1, and that's not a big deal. But what I need help with is identifying those things. So for everybody that has issues assigned to you, it would be helpful if you could go and reassign those to be MPI 4.1 if those are things we're going to wait till 4.1. And I imagine that the answer for almost all of these is going to be that we're going to delay that for anything that's not in progress or that we're not going to discuss today. You can easily filter this to show only the issues that are assigned to you by clicking on your face anywhere you see it. You could also go up here and type in your username, but I'll show you the face thing. So for instance, here's mine. This one is assigned to me. I can click on that and it shows me only the issues that are assigned to me. I can do another person here. So for example, we could click Tony here, and those are all the issues that are assigned to Tony. So if people could go through that filter and just anything that we're not going to be working on, if you could take it out of here, just mark it as, or remove the MPI 4.0 label, add the MPI 4.1 label, that'll make it clear. And then we can get this thing a little cleaned up before our meeting next month. I don't know that I necessarily want to go through what's actually on the board yet in terms of the technical content. I think it's more important to let Tony and Puri talk first, and then whatever's left will come back and talk about the issues that are still outstanding.
So Wesley, just a comment there. Some of the things in the to-do list are things that are assigned effectively to all chapter committees. None of us can individually move those to 4.1.
Yes, that's true. And I think at this point, it's probably safe to say, I actually did kind of look at that this morning. There's a pretty easy way to filter that as well. So we have these things that are marked as to be checked by all CCs, where it's assigned to essentially everybody. So there's only 6 of those. I did a quick look at those, and I would imagine that these are probably not going to make it in at this point, just because we are past the deadline already, and we can put this in 4.1. I think it would probably be best, Bill's not here, to kind of get a final call on these things from Bill, since they were all raised by him. And if we need to try to push for some final reviews, we can. Anybody that hasn't done the final review, if you can get that done quickly, we could still potentially get these in for 4.0. They're all chapter committee things, so they don't require any votes. But my opinion is anything that isn't in by the time Bill puts together the release candidate, it's just not going to be, and we'll move all those issues to 4.1. But it's best if people can do that intentionally, rather than kind of by default we just find out, oh, well, I guess we didn't finish that, so we won't do that.
Well, I think emergency things we could put in, right? I mean, there's this
sure.
mechanism over the review, but yeah, I agree. Anything that deliberately could make a choice on, that would be the preferred way to do it.
Right. So any other questions, comments, whatever for me?
Okay.
Then I think it's Tony's show.
The plan is for today to first go over the promised erratas that we had in the last voting virtual meetings, the last replacement for the full MPI forum that was left over from the big count, which is the one last big thing, and then we'll continue iterating over the board that Wesley just showed. So Tony, you're up.
Okay, great. Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe somewhere good evening. We're discussing our friend, the big count or large count errata that we had quite an elaborate discussion at the last voting meeting where it was, we have voted it in vote, and we've got errata now is the agreement that we would make errata to our voted in large count API that's part of MPI 4. And so with that, and Dan, I believe, has explained many times that the plethora of differences that are incidental, and we've had a wonderful discussion, and we all figured out this path. So what we've got here is a relatively small set of changes. There's a new ticket called 327, which is the errata. It basically actually just says the kinds of things we did, and we went through and explained in this ticket what we did. I'll show this in the terms of the Git changes of the last 2 or 3 things that Pori and I did. With Dan did a lot of the work before that, and he left for us this task. He just left us a pretty easy task. Anyway, so we have this text we agreed on. You'll see a number of things have changed. I'll show you that. But basically, we're clarifying the existence of _C functions. We're clarifying issues with regard to MPI count in a couple of places and Fortran bindings. And we had missed it in beginning a couple of the operations, let's say MPI get envelope and get contents, type get envelope and type get contents. So for basically, there's a list here of all the things we're doing. I'll show you actually in the Git changes in a minute, and so on. So basically, there's a couple of, so that basically we've enumerated in this, we had a Word file for this, we enumerated this here, exactly kind of wording we've changed throughout the chapters to essentially fix missing issues with regard to the beginning or large counts. And they're all minor. I think everyone understood that they were minor. It was the process more than the content. I don't know that we've had any more concerns or issues raised about that these errata actually they do correct what we said they needed to correct. For example, _C, L to _C is an example of ones that are pretty non-controversial. So that's what so this, it's out. I sent actually an email, Puri and I sent an email with, on behalf of all of us out a few minutes before the meeting, just for this, so you can easily find it or go to the issue site. So beyond that, there are a lot of stuff behind here. Okay, I'm going to show you the end. The end is what matters. This is something that sounds like Machiavelli. Sorry, but I'm not. It's not. Maybe that's a good analogy here. But let's see.
Tony, are you expecting that you're sharing something to us?
Oh
We
yes,
can't see
Dan.
it.
Can I tell you something? Every time I start this, I forget to push the share button. And so I apologize. Typically, my mistake. In fact, I do that so often now that someone should just yell at me when we start. Okay, so back to here's our ticket. You're also polite. You let me go through 1/3 of my presentation without yelling at me. Basically enumerates the text we changed actually in the errata. And then the next thing is, sorry, I have to figure out how to hide my floating controls. They're after me. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm dealing with the floating controls. Of course, cover all the buttons I want to push, so I just make this a little smaller. They're controlling my soul here. Okay. So anyway, basically, here's the ticket. Enumerates the changes. The changes are all very basic. I think everyone understood that. It was a process issue more so than the fact that either these changes were needed or appropriate. And then going from that to the here's the actual PR. That's the new PR. Okay, and this is actually, of course, the errata is not 137. This fixes what's in 137. But as I was trying to say, and I think Dan has explained this very, very clearly, there's a lot of stuff here, and the most important stuff is that which is at the end. And in fact, if you look very much, let's see if I can get. I think Dan's already commenting now on this. So okay. So that I hadn't seen that before getting. Thank you, Dan. We were here, but right before the call, we'll take your comments into account, of course. So we basically had, I'm going to show you these three the set of three changes that were made to represent where the errata is right now. And then, Dan, I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to look at your comments. Thank you for them, of course. That's why I was getting lost, because there's more good stuff. So basically, on the three commits that we have made so far, you can see without, it says 25 files. There's a lot of neither here nor there, and that's what I think caused a lot of problem with the no problem. Basically, we look at this filter, looking at the last three commits that Corey and I did. You can see basically where, for example, here in the collective chapter, we're indicating large counts are supported by the user function. We're indicating small changes here. We had to add this text to explain the possibility of the large count, and that's again that's what's been added there. And then, sorry, Dan Holmes, you have something from 20 minutes ago that I wasn't going to show that. So, sorry, I'm just slightly confused by Dan's stuff having added here. But anyway, but the bottom line is that we've added this text. We just, again, clarifying it, making sure that you can't use explicit addresses here. Sorry, with the explicit address mode, you cannot use absolute addresses because there's a type count there. And again, large count variant we renamed it. This was basically slight rewording as we coupled in our new language with this rationales that appeared in a couple places. And Dan is fixing my typing here. Further, small text being added. Say we support the large count types with get envelope and get contents, and again slight changes of wording, and then a rationale that existed already since we wanted to make them merge a little cleaner with each other, very minor. And of course, and Dan has offered some suggestions there. And finally, again, there's a support large, specifying we support large counts with the _C, and there's polymorphism in Fortran when you use the FO8 module. So they're very small, and I'm sorry, Dan, that I tripped over your helpful suggestions. I just wasn't expecting them. We just went over this last hour, and so it looks a little different this hour. But basically, that's where we are with the errata, and we'll implement Dan's suggestions too. But essentially, just clarifies the _Cs. It clarifies a couple places where we missed the embiggenment, and it clarifies a couple places what you can't do, especially with the absolute addresses when MPI count is present. So that's the nature of these errata. They're fully described minus the typos and small fixes Dan suggested on top of what we just checked in. And that's what we'd like you to consider formally at the next time we vote. I think, Dan, I'll take offline with you. I think you and Corey and I can did you already, I guess you already pushed those fixes, Dan, is that correct?
I did them in GitHub. I did them directly in GitHub, so they're just comments at the moment. You can accept them by just doing the commit suggestion.
And I won't do that in real time, but I'll do that offline if I have any questions. We'll certainly ask you, but I'm suspecting we're just going to accept them right away. All right, so that's about it. I hope that wasn't too disorganized, but basically they're a minor set of additions. They're all necessary to make sure this is right. The most important thing, of course, was missing embiggenment for a couple of functions, but also these clarifications are pretty important. They don't impact implementations that haven't been implemented yet. They don't impact users that haven't used them yet because they're still, MPI 4 is still forthcoming. So, that's what we would like you to accept to conclude the large count feature for MPI 4.
So procedurally, the way this works is we'll vote on this at the December meeting, but Bill will go ahead and get this merged for the release candidate soon. I haven't talked to Bill in the last couple of days to figure out where we are on this, because I know there's a bunch of tickets that are still outstanding. So it's good that Dan has these changes, because in theory, everything we're going to want to have in MPI 4, we need to have this week, not in 4 weeks. So yeah, everybody please take a look at this.
Right, when I'm going to go do this as soon as I stop sharing and stop presenting, I'm going to go look at Dan's comments and accept them or interact with him, and then we'll get them accepted, and that'll be in a matter of minutes rather than hours.
Sure. No, I didn't mean this as a criticism of you, Tony. It's more of a call to action for anybody else that wants to have a look, just to say that your opportunity to do so is now, not in a month.
we should probably make clear that the difference between what Tony has just presented and the no votes that failed in the previous voting meeting is actually a really small delta. It's mostly the things that Tony has just presented in these last three commits, and they were all asked for as the stuff that we've put elsewhere in the document already existed in Chapter 18. And people like Rolf and others requested that some of those sentences be lifted from 18 and copied into the relevant place where the functions were first defined. So actually, we're not even, in a lot of cases, we're not even using new words. It's effectively the same sentences just duplicated into the main part of the document rather than Chapter 18. And there's only one instance where we've actually written some substantive new text, which was the biggest block of text that Tony showed in this this difference here. So that is new text, and we should review it as this will be the first time that people have seen it. That block there. Yeah. But the rest of it is effectively stuff that we've already seen and was already normative text just elsewhere and duplicated.
So what was the motivation for duplicating it?
Because Chapter 18 is right at the end of the document, and it's the bindings chapter, and it was saying information that should probably have been mentioned earlier when the functions were actually defined, rather than then giving normative modifications to their semantics in Chapter 18 right at the end of the document. And it's a reasonable argument. People implementing these functions will look at the location where the function is defined and expect all the semantics to be described there, and they won't expect to necessarily have to then go to Chapter 18 and add new normative information which affects the implementation. So fine, accepted, just copy the sentences across and we're done.
And it certainly makes things clearer. You might not even go to look in the back once you're reading the earlier part. So
that would have been my next question. I mean, I'm just a little bit worried about the general concept of having text duplicated, because that is the danger of running inconsistent at some point, right? So is there a need to have it in Chapter 18 then?
Yeah, we did this already in the past for important things. For example, the information about that special constants are cannot be assigned in Fortran and so on. This is everywhere where these constants occur. That was already a conceptual part of the MPI standard.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would agree that we're following a precedent that's been set by other examples. So.
Okay, that's
okay.
Useful.
Yeah. I want to see here in the green box the next line, please.
I'm not sure why it's not showing the.
Only the next line. Yes, it's okay.
Because of my comment, Tony, if you want, you can turn off my comment. It just adds the word "of."
Yes.
Because it's missing. But if you keep scrolling, Tony, then you can see the rest of the sentence.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rolf. You have to read. Pretend the last 2897 is not there. The new 2897 is there, and then 2898.
Yes, I understand. But yes, because I was missing exactly this off in the ticket information. In the issue, you write all the text, and also the word off is missing. I was reading the text.
Yeah, we made a mistake when we just did it.
Yes.
Okay.
Commit.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for finding the mistakes, everyone. All right. So, okay. Okay. So I can't. We're gonna obviously accept those improvements. I appreciate the real time. We didn't try to make Dan come to an early meeting today, but thank you, Dan, for getting right on it and roll. All right. So that's all I have for this. Unless Pori or Dan, you have other comments as the proponents of these errata.
No, I think I'd like to have some people verify that this piece of text that you just scrolled on off the screen here actually makes sense to people, and that's new text. We should treat that with slightly more.
It's complicated. Okay, this is a complicated idea. What's happening here, to be direct? So, relatively a little compared to just saying some very interesting things happen there.
Well, I think that even more so, we should read through this because you will have to read this as part of the reading for the errata anyway. And if somebody detects something, then we're stuck, right?
Sure. So
Yeah, that's what I want to avoid. I want people to look at this. Even if we went through this word by word right now, that would be a way of getting at least some people to look at it and verify that this makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
we can certainly read it out if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. I think that's a good idea.
So, starting at the line 2883, and I read it with Dan's correction implied as I get to that part. When calling any reduction or prefix scan MPI procedure with a user-defined MPI operator, the type of the count parameter, the type of the count parameter is the call to the reduction or prefix MPI procedure does not need to be identical to the type of the len parameter and the user function associated with the user-defined MPI operator. If the count parameter has a type of int in C or integer in Fortran, and the len parameter has a type of MPI count, then MPI will perform the appropriate widening type conversion of the len parameter. If the count parameter has a type of MPI count, and the len parameter has a type of int in C or integer in Fortran, MPI will perform the appropriate narrowing type of conversion of the len parameter. If this narrowing conversion was resulted in the truncation of the len value, then MPI will call the user function multiple times with a sequence of values for len that sum to the value of count. So it unrolls it in that case.
So this is, at least when somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not how I understood how it even works now, right? He's saying only if it is too long, then you will unroll it. I think that can happen in any case, right?
It's permitted to anyway, but it will definitely happen in that case. It doesn't prohibit that. We had this conversation. It's not prohibited from doing that anytime. It could call it one at a time if it wants to, even now. It's idempotent. You can call it with as many of the subset of your, it's data parallel, right? You can call it, there's no loop, there's no dependencies between whether you break it up or not. So you're allowed to do that now. We didn't take that away. We specifically say it will happen. That did come up in some of the conversation we had, whether we needed to say it's always okay to do that. But that's not an errata. That's already, we're not reaching the current. So it's a fine point, but it's a good point.
But isn't it just allowing it to do that because we haven't specified and somebody could take this as a specification of the behavior?
That would be fine if they did. So this is an allowable implementation even now. So it's MPI's free choice which value it provides for len. It might be the value that you gave to count in the actual prefix operation or the reduction operation, but MPI is allowed to use any value less than that and call the function, the user function, multiple times. That's allowed now. In fact, the MPI standard actually explains that the len parameter is there only as convenience, so that MPI might do something better than call it exactly count times with a len parameter of 1.
I think there is a note to implementers right below this particular text.
There is, in fact, that's compliment. So I guess I could show the PDF if anyone wants me to.
Seems like a good idea.
Okay, so hold on. Sorry. Where's my ticket? Where'd it go? It should be
on the issue, the first one, yeah.
Crank. Okay. I'm downloading the file I just uploaded. Okay, sorry. And I'm going to go to collective. I believe it's collective and sorry, we had internet issues. I think too many people are working from home these days and things are a little wonky. All right, I am trying to hide all my metadata here. Okay, so here's the text we put in, modulo does not have Dan's of correction. And then if the number of items cannot be presented, lend the information you invoke, that's what's right below, and that's of course not changed. That's what we thought. This didn't need to get changed, it's still true. We could say, they're related ideas, but one does not restrict the other. Whenever it feels like, it says. But again, is advice to implement it as normative? Because it sort of is there.
Well, it's never been normative. It's just an advice that this is an allowed implementation.
Okay.
But the normative text prior to our change allowed that. The advice is just pointing out what one of the possible allowed implementations. This normative text is now saying that the thing that is allowed might actually be, in an edge case, might actually be necessary.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that in some sense it says a implementation cannot fail because that's necessary. So that's okay.
I'm still, I see where this is going, and if you read the if logic the right way, I think it fits. I'm a little bit worried that a user would read this and say, if this is not the case, then I'm guaranteed to only get one call. And I'm going to structure my code based on that, because it never says that it can do it in any case. It always does an if before that, right?
We'd be happy to, although MPI can always call this operation multiple times on subsets of the data. If, comma, or, then you say, if in particular this occurs, it will have to do it. We can reword it that way without any objection. If you want to, we could say, note that MPI is always allowed to call it multiple times if it wishes to, whether it's necessary or not. So
I think
that's
that
acceptable.
would be helpful for the user to kind of avoid wrong expectations, yes.
So I would just add a sentence that says basically, note that MPI is always free to call this operation multiple times, whether or not it has to do so. But that's sort of what it says below.
You should also look at the advice or the rationale that's at line 7 and following on this page. The len argument allows reduce to avoid calling the function for each element of.
Yeah.
Right. So it's already there as a rationale saying you can do what you like here. MPI can choose. The system can choose to apply the function to chunks of input. Right. That's always been there.
Yeah, which is good because that's why it's that way, so you don't end up having inefficiency, right? So furthermore, MPI will call the user function multiple times.
Yeah, we've now identified an edge case where MPI would be required to call it multiple times, whereas before it was a free choice. It could do it as per item, or it could do it with as many items as it felt like.
You could say as contemplated in the above rationale.
I don't think we need extra text here.
Yeah, okay. But it's all here. We did do this internally. I just didn't present it very clearly because I didn't show you the surrounding text. And we've looked at both what's before and after. And having revisited what we discussed in our working group or sub-working group, that's probably why we stopped where we stopped. Martin, how do you feel now about that?
Yeah, it is pieced together. I think if you read the whole text, you probably shouldn't get the impression that this can't be done, right? I still think it would be useful to mention it, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I agree.
I mean, while putting the text, we thought this is the right place to put it because it's kind of in between those two things, the rationale and the implementation. And now we say that, hey, here is one case where, you have to do this, or the implementation has to do this.
Yeah, the location's fine, I think, yeah.
I think given the timescale, I would be preferring not to put new text in.
Right, because I want to see it again.
Yeah, if this is sufficient, then we should do this. And if somebody in the future wants to put a further clarification in, an extra sentence that is somewhat superfluous but is vaguely clarifying, then yeah, we can do that for one or some subsequent time.
And it was an errata for erratum for 4.1, if they want to. I don't think anyone would get confused. It says it can call. It doesn't say below you can only call. I think we're good, honestly.
Yeah, the if direction is technically right. If somebody gets misunderstood, we can say, no, you got your if logic wrong.
Right, it has to say if and only if formally, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other opinions on this? Is everybody good with the text?
Yeah.
Yes.
There'll be a hash and a new thing after except Dan's small but very necessary fixes, if that's okay. And then so I'll put up a new PDF and so forth probably by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and I did notice that the MPIs are not escaped in 2 locations, so we will fix that as well.
We'll fix a number of things and we'll publish a new the PR will self-update obviously, but we'll do that soon tonight. Before you go ahead and implement those suggested things directly in Git if you can.
I've done a few of them in the PR directly on GitHub.
I would recommend that too, Pori, if they're tiny. That way we just get them done now.
Do that.
All right. Martin, back to you.
And then let me ask the general question that, I mean, this is just a preview basically to make sure that we get this right. If this will be brought up for an errata reading, that anybody has any concerns on this, anybody wants to see more from Tony and Puri and Dan before this comes up to a full reading of an errata and a vote for it? Because we don't want this to fail.
Yes, I want. In the issue, they tell we added this text to the data type chapter, and I don't see it in when I'm doing the diff. Therefore, I would really like to see it in the data type chapter.
I don't understand the request. Could you explain what you want?
Okay.
I thought Tony had just presented it in the diff just now. Actually, I thought that's one of the files.
The data type chapter, yes, I want to see it again. This about type create H indexed and type create H indexed block.
Right, it's right here.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not the screen anymore, but if you look, let me reshare my screen. But it is in the data types chapter. It is marked as a diff there. It's shown. Did I go over too quickly? Did I skip it? Here, let me share my screen again. Let's make sure you understand that it is present in the diff. For sure, it's here. If you look here where my screen is now, you can see that it is covered in lines 202 through 207 under the data type chapter, and then a little bit more. I fixed some of the typos with the rationale. I fixed the rationale, and Dan fixed my fixing of the rationale. So it's here for you to look at further.
Before data type constructors.
Yeah, it's in here. So it's in here. It's in the PDF that's on the.
Okay, this means it's not directly at the functions. I want to see it.
Well,
give me a minute.
Sure, absolutely.
Page 5.
Yeah, you're right, Rolf. We chose to put one sentence in just before the data type constructors section, rather than put 3.
There's a section. It is in the section type constructors and explicit addresses. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Perfect.
Okay, great.
Tony, just for clarification, it's the entire pull request that you're looking at now that's the errata, correct? I mean, these changes here are the changes you've seen since the last thing you read, right?
We only showed you these pieces because everything else was already shown in glorious detail before, but you're getting everything. So, Pori, would you explain that more clearly? We're getting everything from the no plus these things.
So Dan would be the best person to explain this.
Dan, go ahead.
So, yeah, the big count ticket that was voted for and accepted in the last voting meeting was branched off of MPI 4.0 a long time ago. And therefore it doesn't include a whole bunch of things that are on mainstream 4X. This one does include all of those things. So there are a lot more changes here than one would wish there to be. So it touches a lot of files, which it ultimately it won't change because these changes are already in 4X. But this was created in a way that it updated it to 4X as though it would branched off more recently, but it doesn't actually branch off more recently. So it affects 25 files. This PR affects 25 files, at least that's what it tells us. But when it actually goes into 4X, it won't, because a lot of those changes are actually from already in 4X. So yeah, conceptually, this is everything that was in the no votes that failed in the last virtual meeting, plus the things that Tony's just gone through in this virtual meeting here.
So should we rebase off of that? Would if we rebase committed that, would that disappear those? But it was hard, right? That was the 2 days of work that was impossible, right? Was the issue?
It's not impossible, but it would take some days to I mean, it did before. I've done a rebase thing, but then if you do the rebase thing, then there is no way of getting to a point which is equivalent to the things already been voted for. If you attempt to do the difference between what we voted for in the last meeting and what we want to be in 4.0 when it's all done, you need to start from where we voted from, which is branched off of 4X and a whole bunch of commits down that branch. If you don't care about that, then you can say, what's the difference between the current 4X and what we want 4X to be? That's a small number of changes. It's a much smaller diff. But if you start from where we need to start from to say this is an errata from there, then you end up with a mess. And there's a giant merge conflict with sessions and a whole bunch of other things that's in between these two things we want to present. My Gitfoo isn't up to the job of showing, what conceptually is a much smaller list of changes.
So what is the risk? So Ryan brought up the issue that they needed to digest. I'm sorry, Ryan, I'm speaking for you. But these understanding what was being changed. So what substantially are we not showing, Dan, here that would impact at length with the group in terms of
so
fixing?
At the moment, you're only showing the last 3 commits on this.
That's correct. So what other things do you think are particularly germane there's nothing else that we haven't discussed? Because certainly we presented the errata. Pori presented that. We discussed them all. They're very similar to this. These are additions to that. So what's missing? Is there anything that we have not revealed to the group that we're changing?
In toto, no, but in this meeting, yes.
Sure,
right?
I understand.
Because all of the no votes things that were presented in the previous voting meeting, take those as read, and then add these things, and you have the complete set of changes that this errata consists of. If you expanded from those 3 commits to all, however many there are commits on this, then you see changes to 25 different files, but a lot of them are in the Python stuff for the Python changes. Those changes have already been done. This issue doesn't do those things. This pull request doesn't do those things itself.
So there's basically cherry picking going on. It's a whole bunch of stuff going on here.
Yeah.
That reflects all these changes. Some of them are ours. So I think if someone is worried, I think, Brian, you can look at all of these, and we could even have a separate meeting to go over all the 25 with you offline.
So I think the other way of doing it would be to actually to merge this offline in your own fork of this repository, to actually complete this pull request. Merge it, and then compare the result that you get to make sure that it hasn't just undone or badly done all of the things that it says it's, to see what the difference is. Then my Gitfoo just isn't up to the task of extracting just the things that we know have changed in this PR, and not bringing in all of the things that have changed since in this interim. Going backwards down one branch and then forwards up 4X and then branching off to do these.
So if I do this, I grab the latest MPI 4X, merge this in, this is on a test branch, build the PDF, and then diff the PDF to the current MPI 4X using PDF diff and Acrobat, assuming this computer has a lot more memory than my old computer, I would give something that shows exactly those changes, would I not?
I expect so, yes. I've not done it, but
So Corey, will you help me figure that out? Can we do that experiment in the next few days, and then we can publish that also? Then you could have, Ryan, you could literally see the compiled differences, if not the differences by reading the Git. Would that work better?
so I think that's a way of doing it, PDF wise. Puri effectively already has such a diff because he's manually marked these things up as they've happened.
Okay.
And so apart from maybe these last 3 commits, Puri already has such a marked up, but manually marked up document. This would be a way of doing it programmatically.
Okay. So, Corey, you think we could update your either one way or another, update what you've got? Let's do that.
So we could definitely do an annotated PDF. By the way, I used Acrobat to get the first order, and then I manually highlighted it. So I didn't do everything manually. So I didn't take advantage of Acrobat. So I could, we could create a PDF which is annotated with the changes.
Okay. I think we should do that. I think it's only fair what Ryan
We will need to do at least an
thinks.
sorry.
You cut
We
off for
will
a
need to
second.
do that. Yeah, we will need to do that for the errata reading because we do actually need to read the whole errata because it's an errata reading.
Yeah.
So we won't be able to get away with just these 3 commits. So we will need a marked up PDF that marks up all the changes that this PDF is really intending, this PR is intending to do.
I can create that because I already have the earlier PDF, and these new text changes, they're only handful, so we can definitely make an annotated PDF.
So
Yeah, that's
from
what I was expecting.
from the parliamentary procedure, Martin, I can then read off that annotated PDF for the reading, or one of us can read it off for the reading in December.
I think that would
Rather
be the
than
idea. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I
that
do
would
that
be
instead of doing the Git diffs. So if someone will be forbidden from asking for the Git diffs once we do them, correct? I'm kidding, but I'm saying we will not go back to the Git diffs in that case because that's the point where it's very complex. So we keep bringing up.
No, you for the reading, you should read what is more palatable for everyone, right? And if somebody requests something, then it's a different story. But if you think this is the better way to digest it, which I think it is, because we can see the context. I'm losing a little bit the context when you just scroll through the zip gifs.
Absolutely, I did that quickly too. I'm sorry, but we'll do it that way. So we'll provide that. So Ryan, do you think that's going to work?
That would work for me. I just want to make sure that we're very clear on what we're voting on. I don't think we have a problem on this side with the content. So, we can go through and try to tease some of this stuff out. And I think we can manage regardless. The PDF would be great. If we just have to look at the diffs, I'm certain that the group that looks at MPI on my side, we can still figure it out. But it would be really nice to have the PDFs.
Yeah. Well, we're going to make the PDFs because that's what I would like to present, or one of us will present. But we'll. You're free to do that too. You guys can tease through what we've got already too. Please wait till look at the. I wait till we make the PDF to save yourself some effort.
Yeah, and if somebody with better Git skills than me wishes to attempt to do the work that I've tried a couple of times and failed at, to make this a cleaner Git diff, then that's great. I can try and work with that person and say what I've done, what didn't work. If somebody wishes to take that task on, then great. But I don't know how to make it work the way I want it to. So.
And Dan is my Git guru, so it's not clearly going to be me. So if Dan thinks it's hard, I think it's hard too. I don't think it gives more clarity. I think the PDF gives perfect clarity because you can see before and after. And then you can know exactly what you're getting, and that's it. And that's in fact what we publish. We don't publish the LaTeX source, we publish the PDF as the standard, right? That's what's normative.
That sounds good to me. Thanks for putting this together, guys. This is basically what we wanted
Great.
from our side. So I don't think there'll be too much disagreement this time.
I think that concludes what we've got, Martin, but we've took these extra action items on board.
Okay.
Well, we needed to do anyway. We just didn't enunciate them. So I don't think there's any surprises from our side.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much for the useful feedback. By the way, Rolf, I'll count on you. We'll make sure you know when the PDF is ready in case you want to give it your eagle eye as soon as it's done.
Okay.
Super.
Do you have anything procedural still for this?
Do you want
Sorry,
me
were
to
you
just? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm asking you, Wesley.
Okay.
Okay.
For large count, you mean, or in general?
No, for this particular one. Let's make sure we don't get away.
No, just what I said before. And Bill's online now, so we can get a little feedback from him. But yeah, at this point, it's just about getting all of these errata and chapter committee things and everything finished, so that we can merge everything that doesn't need a vote into 4X, and then start merging everything that does need a vote into the release candidate draft. So I was going to propose maybe one of the next things we could do is let Bill speak if there's anything, Bill, that you want to bring up, things you're waiting on, kind of status of what's going on.
There are a number of things that I've asked for people to resolve conflicts. There's been some requests for reviews. In those cases, I'd like somebody to either say, I'd like either to have the reviews done or for somebody to say we don't need the review. And then there is a problem that popped up with something that I put in with built indices. I did get I need a file to debug it. I've gotten one of those, so thanks for sending those. I'll try to get that fixed in the next day or so. I've got a pretty busy day today, but I can probably get it in this evening. And then I will need some time to go through for some just editor cleanup. So as everybody's looking at the timeline, please be aware that there's some of that. So for example, there's a new make target you can do, which is make error summary, which will list the LaTeX errors. There are a couple of, there's a duplicate and an undefined label, so those will need to get fixed. There's a bunch of overfull boxes. So underfull boxes are not a problem. Overfull boxes are, particularly ones that are more than a few points overfull. So I encourage people to have a look at those. It does mean digging through the log file. The summary file will just list things out, but it doesn't give you the context. Typically, those are examples that just need to have line breaks in different places. So here's the note. I will fix every single overfull box that remains when I do my pass. So if you want to have a look at your examples, it's good. Otherwise, I'll take care of it.
Okay. So I don't know the exact set. I saw the emails from you yesterday, but I don't know the exact set off the top of my head of things that need to be merged and are waiting on somebody to do something. But for anybody that's on the call that got one of those such emails from GitHub, we do need you to review something, to fix a merge conflict, to do something so we can move that forward and get that draft done for both SC and for us to be reviewing for the December meeting.
Oh yeah, that does also. I think I was a note this morning. I do need to go through the front matter as well. We did that last year around this time, so probably doesn't need much. But I would also appreciate people looking at the current front matter, given that there's a couple of new things added. One of the things that the front matter does is it extremely briefly mentions major changes in the standard. So please have a look at that text and suggest fractions of sentences to include.
Yeah, so I think last year, Bill, you and I sat in a room at SC and kind of threw that together really quickly. So since then, I think some of the chapter committees, both the makeup of the committee and the chairs of the committee have changed. We can get the updated version of those from the website, so that's pretty straightforward. The kind of general, here's what MPI4 is, paragraph probably does need an update because that has certainly changed since last year's draft.
Yeah, it does. One thing that I did do in prep for future updates is it's now much easier to update the names of people who have participated in the process. So that's another thing for people to look at. And if there's anything missing or anything that needs to be corrected, just send them to me. That'll be the easiest way to get them done. I'll just do a group of those and get them batched and submitted.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been trying to help make the attendance logs a little bit easier to parse and more consistent, but that we always end up with something that's not quite right, an institution that's not spelled the way people want it or something.
Right. So the point here is you've now been told any mistakes are somebody else's fault.
Also, one thing that is helpful for anybody, it's probably less of an issue this year because we've had so many virtual meetings, but certainly in the past, we have had people that we wanted to include in the list of contributors who didn't necessarily attend the full forum meetings, but were very active in working groups, and we thought that it was worth acknowledging those people. So if anybody is looking through that list and sees a name that they think should be in there, that's also helpful because it's much harder for Bill or myself or anybody that's not involved in that working group to know about that. Guillaume, yeah, you asked if the release candidate branch is available yet, and the answer is no. The intention there, and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the intention there is the release candidate branch will not be created until we've finished merging everything that doesn't require a vote first. Because if we create the release branch early, then we have to do work twice.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be still a few more days getting all of the editor changes and the chapter committee changes that don't require votes finished up. Then we'll create the release candidate branch and start merging in the errata things like what Tony presented, and there are a few more from myself and Aurelian and Dan that maybe not Dan, I don't remember. Anyway, there's a few more errata that still need to get merged, and that'll go in once we finish all of the smaller things first.
So just to repeat it, when the deadline for this release candidate is Monday already, because it doesn't look like it, but we actually are within 4 weeks of the actual meeting already again.
Right.
So there is actually some time pressure due to our rules on this. So if anybody wants to have something in, that really needs to happen now.
Yeah, and then once that draft is ready, then I will start dividing that up and send out review assignments. So keep in mind that those will come probably middle of next week once that PDF is done, and I can start splitting it into pieces. So anything else from you, Bill?
Nope, but I'm going to have to go. So just the last sort of reminder is if you have any questions or you're running into trouble, just please drop me a line right away. I'll get to it as fast as I can.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So, Martin, do you want me to go through the remaining in progress things? I know some of these are kind of done and just waiting to be merged, but.
Well, I think that's unless somebody else has something for the agenda, I think that was the rest we wanted to do, and to check if something, you can check something off your board, right?
Yeah.
Is there something else to bring up today?
I don't think so.
I don't hear anybody else yelling here. So, all right, let's do this.
Okay, so I'll just work from right to left, skipping the done column, of course. So Dan, we've got a couple of consistent use things here from you. First off, are people seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Dan, we got a couple of consistent use things. I'm not sure if these are already done and just waiting to be merged.
So their chapter committee changes, only I have looked at them, or at least only I have approved them. I did get a message back from one person from the committee, the point-to-point chapter committee, saying that they'd started to look at them but hadn't completed that work. So they're sort of in this, I think they're fine, but the rest of the chapter committee should really sign, at least one person should sign off on them before I say, yes, go, merge.
Okay. So yeah, for both of those, we really need that in the next, really the next day or two, so that we can get everything merged.
So we could look at them in this meeting and get approval from other people, but the chapter committee changes, so I don't really want to take up plenary time if we have something else to look at.
Well, this is kind of the day, so I'm fine. I mean, these are all short, so I'm fine with spending a minute to get these done. We don't have that many of them to do, and we don't have any more time to do it. So I think that's probably a good use of time.
Okay, sure.
We're here. Why not use the time? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So this one that you've shown for me, thanks, Wesley, is so these are both coming from changes that that Bill picked up during his editor pass some large number of months ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I think, the way time's moving at the moment.
Yep.
So this is a language fix for the phrase "as if a receive." So in the text on the left, there is "as if a receive from proc null was issued," and it was just an odd phrase because receive is a verb, not a noun. So it's fine. We need to fix that. I've changed it so that instead of saying "as if a receive from proc null was issued," see section whatever, I've said this is consistent with the status object produced by a call to MPI receive or to MPI probe with source equals MPI proc null, see section something or other. Right, so it still references the same place. It adds a reference here to probe because that's also actually covered by this. This has the same rule. This particular situation is consistent with both receive and probe. So to me, that sentence makes sense. It actually is more informative than it was. But otherwise, it's just it's not changing any semantics or anything. It's not a normative change really. It's just wording change.
Any comments from anybody on this?
It's good to me.
I agree.
Yeah, sounds good to me too.
Okay, well, so then this is, we'll say this is ready. All right, so then the other one.
Yeah, so the other one is there is already an existing rationale, which is basically this exact text. I've just lifted it, copy paste. There is already an existing rationale about cancel, and it wasn't present for start, but it applies to start as well. And so it's just a matter of lifting the rationale from one place and copying it to somewhere else so that it applies to both functions. So the rationale is, although the in request handle parameter should not need to be passed by reference, the C binding has listed the argument type as MPI request with a star since MPI some really early time. This function signature therefore cannot be changed without breaking existing MPI applications. End of rationale. So that has been true, and it was been noted in a rationale for cancel since forever. It is also true for start, because start doesn't actually change the request, at least visibly. It doesn't change the handle, so it doesn't really need to be passed by value. It can be passed by it doesn't have to be passed by reference. It could be passed by value here. But it's been listed as MPI request pointer since forever, and so we're just making that clear here. That's why, and we aren't going to fix it because it's not broken.
So you're duplicating this rationale to the second function, or?
Yes, it's cut and paste. That's why it was so simple to do.
All right, so it's not moving. It's not moving before. It's actually duplicating it.
Yeah, it's duplicating it. It still applies to cancel, and it's still where it was. That doesn't show up as a change, obviously, because I didn't change it.
Dan?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yes.
It is in principle MPI cancel. The request argument is defined as an in argument.
Yes.
In the language independent. Okay.
In both of these routines, it is, yes.
And for MPI start, the request argument is defined to be in out.
I did not think that was true. Let me just look that up. I mean, if that's true, then this is a bad change. But I didn't think that was true
because
the non-blocking. Because
the idea is that it may be the idea of this in out is that when a request handle changes from active to inactive, that this may be done in the value of the request handle and not in the database behind the request handle.
Yeah, okay, you're right. It is defined in the language independent as in out, not as in. So that doesn't make sense then. I didn't check that, which was foolish of me.
That's the reason why we are doing such readings.
Yes. Yes, thanks. Yeah, thanks for catching that, because I wouldn't have caught that. I think, yeah, I mean, I had always assumed that it was in, because there's no way that you can get out a different request, as in a different request handle. I would be very surprised if I got a different request handle out from start than the thing I sent in. So I don't believe that it will actually be an out parameter, as in MPI is not going to replace your request with a different one, and so it's not an out argument. MPI will never use it that way. It might be one of the in arguments where something in the object that the handle represents or points to changes, but we often give those in as in parameters and then just have it's passed by reference or whatever. So so I think
this means
I think probably this is I think this is probably a bad change then, simply because it's in out, and it should be passed as in. I have no idea why it's defined as in out. That's a different change though. That's an errata. Because we could change it as an errata. We could change it to the language independence that it was in, and add this rationale that said that the reason it's in and it's still got a star in it, as pointer declaration, is because of this rationale. But that would then be clear that MPI is not allowed to replace your request when you pass it into start, which would be very surprising to all users, I think. But that's an errata, not, and we're too late for that. Yeah, okay. So in which case, Wesley, we're not going to do this one. Certainly not for 4.0. We'll have to take this one back. Take this one back to the working group and probably bring back an errata for the 4.1 era.
That's fine.
So set the labels appropriately, I guess.
Yep. And I will take it out of the project. Okay. That's fine. All right, so that's everything on the chapter committee column. So now let's go over to the errata column. Yeah, go ahead, Rolf.
I have, when you're going this direction, I have a question to the done, to
Sure.
C20. When Bill is still not happy with the status in the moment, and I really want to change the figures that I have. The second set of lines as dashed instead of blue, instead of red, or red and dashed, but dashed is important thing. And then I can change the text from blue and red to solid and dashed. And then in principle, the colors are only for beauty and not really for better reading. Of course, beauty is always for better reading. Therefore, we use beautiful fonts and so on, but it's not for functionality. And my question is now, when I'm doing this, can I still do it in the pull request that exists to do an additional commit to the pull request?
No, that pull request has been merged, so there'll need to be a new pull request. It probably should be the same issue, though, since it's all kind of the same thing.
Same issue,
we should probably reopen this issue and put it back in that column.
I reopen the issue and then, okay, then at the end of this meeting, I need 5 minutes personally. Okay, I need a short help.
Okay, so all right, so I've reopened this issue. We can create, or you can create a new pull request to solve this, and then we'll close it again when that happens. So this is back on the board in the in progress column.
So this is targeted at 4.0. Is that correct? Still?
Yeah,
yes,
this is a fix. So this is a fix for a fix, I guess. But this Bill wants this for 4.0.
Yeah.
So yeah, this will need to go in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and now I know how to solve it.
Okay.
Also, Bill's wording is also the whole time telling me that I'm still on the wrong way, but that's the way I can solve the problem. And anything more is then going to 4.1.
I think what you described is probably fine. Although one thing we want to make sure is that whatever solution you implement is compatible with the checks we're currently doing on each pull request to make sure that we're following the rules that we've set out. And if we want to change that, then we need to move that to 4.1.
Yeah.
That's
I removed already this coloring in the LaTeX, and I also removed then these special labels that here is coloring. Therefore, I expect all is fine.
Yeah. Well, we'll
but
be
it's
able to tell
still
very
not
quickly.
fine in the sense of that color is still used to give an information. This means in my wording is still the word red and blue, and this should not be. I have learned that blue, and thanks Dan for your hints for the papers. I have now learned red and blue does not work for everyone.
Which is great for all these electoral maps I'm looking at in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just coincidence that those came up in some feed or other that they've actually been very recently published. So it was very timely that those were published in Nature and Phys.org and whatever. So I thought I'd pass them on. I just wanted to make a mention that you mentioned in one of the earlier comments, Rolf, of using dotted and dashed as the difference.
Yes, I only want to do solid and other, and other can be dotted or dashed.
Yeah. So I would, if you've got samples of those and given the timescales, this is a big ask. If you could send those through to me, sort of, as soon as you get them, I would really like to send them to one of my colleagues at EPCC.
Yes.
Who's partially sighted, and I'd like to see whether he can tell the difference easily between the, because we're just replacing one possible accessibility problem with another if we're not careful, and I'd like to at least make some effort to try and avoid that.
Yes. It's in principle, I will try to do dashed as long as the dashing that PowerPoint is doing still works with the length of the arrows that I have. If the dashed things are that there are only two portions of that you can't find the line, then I may need to go to dotted. But in principle, dashed is of course the better way of doing it, because then it's absolutely clear. It's not looking like gray. Dotted looks like gray if you have not glasses or your eyes are bad.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to make some attempt to pass it through somebody who actually does need accessibility changes. To be able to visualize that sort of difference. Just so that we cover that base and try and make the right sort of change here.
Yes. Yeah.
Dan, I put some color in a figure for the unguided mode, but I don't put any reference to the color in the text. I put already dashed line. So if you could check with your with this figure too, if it is accessible, that would be a put for me too.
Yes, that's a good idea. I hadn't realized that had happened.
No.
So could you send me either the picture or a PDF that has that in, so that I can just be more convenient for me to do that quickly?
Yeah, sure. I'll send you that. But the problem is a little bit different, because I don't mention the color in the text. So it's but I would like to be sure that it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, this colleague of mine is not colorblind, but is partially sighted, as in, needs to be very close to the screen with huge text and things. So it's a different problem.
Okay.
But if you print it black and white, it looks readable.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's one indication too, right? In addition to the other visual issues, right?
Well, I think it is. I mean, I put some various dashed lines, so I think it's readable, but I just want a check on this. So.
Okay. No, I think checking this is good, and I think that's what will also be part of when we go through the document for the release. I think that's one of the things we look at for consistency too. Then, and if you really find something there that can be fixed still, I think. But the more we can get ahead of them, of course, good. Yeah.
Okay. So anything else on this one? All right, then I'll go back over here to look at the errata. So I think these top two are already done. This one is mine with the errata for the argc and argv values in MPI and a net thread. We already went over the pull request to fix that, and that's just waiting for the release candidate branch to open. Same thing with Aurelian's ticket, I think. I don't think Aurelian's in here. For catastrophic errors. Then we have, so this is Guillaume, Christophe, and Tony for the next few. Somebody jumping in there?
I don't know. Should I present something here? No.
Well, so I'm happy to present the screen.
I think the free left is the easiest.
Right.
I think we met in the working group now over all the stuff and should be ready. Which one is this? 315? Yeah. That's just there was not clear from the definition of MPI card sub how the outcome is in this operation. there was only an example which had 2 possibilities, and they did not even cover the periodicity. So I just added the text, which is also in this issue, and this was without changes so far. So yeah, so yeah. Oh, it's small. Let's see if we can increase this. Yeah. So that's around the function, and there's an example following a bit below. You can maybe increase the diff there. Yeah. Yeah, so there are just these 2 examples, and they mention like what the input parameters and output parameters sind, and from there it is not clear what actually the associated topology information to the new communicator should be, because the periodicity was also not mentioned in this example. So, and that's why if you scroll up, I just created this text. Yeah, and I guess I should read this now. Stopping here. So I added the topologies of the new communicators describe the subgrids. The dimensionality of the subgrids is the number of remaining dimensions, the number of true values, and MPI argument remain dims. The dimensions of the subgrids are the remaining dimensions of the grids associated with the original communicator, i.e. the values of the original grid dimensions for which the corresponding entry in remain dims is true. The periodicity for the remaining dimensions in the new communicator is preserved from the original communicator. So, and I think that's also what, for example, OpenMPI implemented, which I checked against. So the implementations are in line with this at the moment. So I think that's just a clarification, which should be no issue. And yeah, make clear what is not clear from the examples only. Yeah.
So I think on line 1592, where it says the number of true values, true should be in some other font to say that it's really, you mean the value true. I think it's not a word, it's a value at that point. I think that needs to be, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, or uppercase, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
would be worth checking how it is done, maybe in other parts of the standard as well. It's needed.
Yeah, I guess there's it might be it's not going to be const because that'll get indexed. It might be code, I think. It's effectively a code value. I mean, in Fortran it would be actually .true dot, and in C it would be something non-zero. You know, but I think it reads badly if it's just an English word.
And it's the same for the
Is
next
your
line.
example here?
That's just an example. But
yeah, there we are. So it's got MPI code as being the language independent, but code. Yeah, like that, I think.
Yes,
And you have the same on 1593 at the end of the line.
Yes.
For all the parts there. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, you can make that small change, and that's not a problem.
Do we use the word dimensionality elsewhere, or is it the rank of the subgrids? I'd like that checked as well. Just I don't know what we call that. The number of dimensions, I guess, is it?
We are not using rank for dimensions. This means the Fortran word rank for dimensions is not used in MPI.
But we probably use the number of dimensions in the subgrids is the number of remaining dimensions, yeah?
Yeah.
Rather than dimensionality.
Yes, number of dimensions.
Might be helpful to put these things in the.
I have a letter here
on the pull request.
You can also comment directly. Okay.
But if we put the number of dimensions, then the sentence is a little bit redundant because the number of dimensions of the subgrid is the number of remaining dimensions. So I think to me
No.
that the sentence should be reworked, no?
I think that's exactly what needs to be said here.
Oh,
is
okay.
The number of dimensions in the subgrid is, is the same as the number of remaining dimensions.
Sure.
Yeah. But that suggests that we should probably replace the word periodicity as well for the same sort of reasons. But that's a less easy fix in situ. But you could consider that.
But I think periodicity is already used elsewhere.
If that's true, then great.
Yeah, I thought it is. It sounds really familiar. I can't pinpoint
Yep.
it.
We certainly say
5 uses.
Right. Okay. That's fine.
Okay. Stop. I don't have to check this. Okay.
Do not use dimensionality. I checked that as well. All right. Anything else on this one? All right. I think there's a few things to work on there. So let's go on to this one.
That's 311. Yeah, that's the easiest maybe of all. There was just this wrong term used in MPI card rank to get the process mapping to the coordinates. And there it was talking about process groups with Cartesian structure. However, there is no argument with group or whatever associated to this call, but a communicator. And also the topology information is associated with topology, so it should be instead for the group, this sentence changed to for a communicator with an associated Cartesian topology, the function MPI card rank translates the logical process coordinate to process ranks as they are used by the point-to-point routines. Yeah. So a group cannot do this because it has not the information.
Questions or comments on this one? Going. 314.
Okay, that's a bit longer version where we had this problem with MPI card dim get and MPI card get, as well as the corresponding functions for the graph interface to retrieve information about the associated topology information. And it was tied to the original creating calls like MPI card create and to the arguments which were passed to these functions. And this is not possible clearly because we have, for example, this MPI card sub, which will create also a Cartesian communicator, and then the behavior is not well defined for this, what they should return. So I had a 3-step process in fixing this. Mention how topology information is associated with the communicators and not so untying this with the functions. As next, and then defining for each creating for each communicator creation function that associates topology information, what topology information it actually added to the communicator. Okay. And now maybe the fastest way is to, if you have the PDF below.
Sure, yeah, I can switch to the PDF.
Yes. Yeah, I tried to mark this with PDF LaTeX here.
Give me just a second.
Yeah. Because I think it's easier to read than all the different.
Sorry, things can be rather slow when I'm on the work VPN. All right, here we go.
Yeah, and then you can search for number 314 with a hash in front of. And then it should go through all the tickets. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with it starts in the chapter 7, which is not the topology chapter, but a chapter about communicators, groups, and all this stuff. And yeah, there had to be added at some places the handling now. For example, here where it mentions how cached information is propagating. So here, no cached information propagates from COM to new COM, and no virtual topology information is added to the create communicator. So because I have to state that a communicator creation function adds topology information, I have also to mention when it's not added, more or less, as a hint here. And as a placeholder, as I discussed also with Dan, that somebody who's modifying this in the future has a hint that there has to be added something, and that's in this case for MPI com create here. Okay, then next one. Yeah, yeah, that's the same now for MPI com create group, adding no topology information. Exactly same wording. Next one. That's now for the function com split, exactly. And then we have com split type, I guess, as the next. So here, here also there was no cached information propagates from was not there in the previous standard. So I added the entire sentence here. Okay, and I think search further, then that's for MPI com split type, exactly the same thing again. No topology information added. Yeah.
Where was the plural? Was the plural? Did I see this right?
Can I go back?
Sorry.
Because when you split, you can create several communicators. That's why.
No cached information from com to a new com.
You created communicators. But that's normal because you can create, when you split, you create several communicators.
Yeah.
That's why so I was wondering the same thing for com split, but it's okay, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit weird because the new com is singular, but I see the point. Yeah.
Each process.
I think I quite like that because it that's the first time maybe that it's explicit that you only get one of them, but there's lots of them in total.
Yeah.
That's quite clever.
You think the reader will get that hint?
With enough browbeating and reinforcement, yeah, sure.
If we get tickets to fix the plural, then we know it didn't work out.
That's true.
Okay. Good. Okay, that's now the beginning of the chapter 8. So that's the topology chapter now, which is moved to 8. And here I add all this information, how the topology is handled in context of the communicator. And thanks to them, this text improved a lot since several readings now. And it sounds like information representing an MPI virtual topology may be added to a communicator at the time of its creation. If a communicator creation function adds information representing an MPI virtual topology to the output communicator it creates, then it either propagates the topology representation from the input communicator to the output communicator, or adds a new topology representation generated from the input parameters that describe a virtual topology. The description of every MPI communicator creation function explicitly states how topology information is handled. Communicator creation functions that create new topology representations are described in section 8.5. Okay, so that's clarifying now how this should be handled in this context and where I can obtain them from with the different functions instead of tying them to this creator functions. Good. Yeah, then there are just some minor fixes here because I now have the possibility to use functions to attach it, and it's not defined anymore. I switch here from is to can be. The function the function MPI card create can be used to create Cartesian topologies. the function what MPI graph create can be used to create graph topologies, and the functions MPI disk graph create adjacent and MPI disk graph create can be used to create distributed graph topologies. Yeah, and then I think that's just a minor thing that's mentioning just the above functions as they are examples now and not the only ones again. So. Good. Yeah, and then that's more or less the starting of the core point. Now we can fix the problem with the MPI card dim get, as we can now refer to this attached topology stuff. And doing this for a Cartesian topology, the functions MPI card dim get returns the dimensionality, and MPI card get returns the dimensions and periodicity of the associated Cartesian topology. Yeah, instead of tying this to the specific creating core.
Yeah. So for the same reason,
yeah, go ahead. I think you're going to mention that we should modify the dimensionality word here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the number of dimensions would be fine.
Yeah. Agreed.
Good. 14.
I suppose technically on the next line, dimensions should be replaced with the length of each dimension or size of each dimension, rather than you're not returning the whole dimension. You're just returning how big it is, I guess. But I don't care.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's length of dimension. Yeah, the number of processes in the dimension. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, copy that from somewhere else. That there must be parameters that say, you know, what a dimension is, and there'll be a phrase that'll be common, I hope.
Okay, good. Got this. Okay, jumping. Yeah, that's the MPI card create functions again now has to mention that it attaches all the information to the communicator. So MPI card create will associate information representing a Cartesian topology with the specified dimensionality. So I should fix this here again. Dimensions and periodicity with the new communicator. Yeah. However, here I like that it's really short and compact in this form. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's a bit of a pity, but you know, number of dimensions, the length of each dimension, and the periodicity. Yeah, something.
Yeah. 53. 96. Okay, good. Great. Yeah, okay. Then the same for MPI graph dims get and MPI graph get. Functions MPI graph dims get and MPI graph get retrieve the graph topology information that is associated with the communicator. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that this is not good here. So there was associated with a communicator by and then call parameters, something like this was the previous text.
Could you put the on the beginning of the sentence?
Sorry?
Could you put the word the or the on the front of the sentence? The functions, blah.
Functions retrieve the graph topology information that is. I don't get it.
It reads functions MPI graph dims get and MPI graph get, and Dan suggests to put the functions MPI graph dims get and MPI graph get. Just to put the word before the word function.
It's not there yet, but I can do functions.
So to be consistent with what we had before, should we also say can be used to retrieve?
I would keep it as short as possible.
Yeah, I think that's what these functions do. I think that the reason for can be in the other setting is because they're examples of how you might do it. Those are some ways of doing it, but there are other ways that aren't mentioned there.
Yeah. Okay.
There are no other ways of getting this information out again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think this is also restrictive. Like you could still add it here. The can is optional for me. The functions. Yeah.
I would add the word input with the input communicator, but would that be too much?
There is no other communicator here, so I guess it's superfluous, but it's not incorrect, but it's superfluous.
I guess then there should be lots of changes if I have to change.
Yes.
Okay.
This place. Yeah. Like what? Then you would have to check also MPI card, no MPI com rank or whatever. All these functions. Yeah. The functions. Okay. But
we asked when I discussed this with Christoph, we asked whether we could write is associated with the communicator com, because in both routines it's about two routines, and in both routines the name of the communicator, the argument name is com. No, but that's not needed. It's again, keep it short.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit a strange place because this defining text is between the two functions, one on the top and one on the bottom. If we have a third one, then we would have to split up also this part, I guess.
And in the next sentence, then com is coming.
Yeah, but here
we need not have it twice. That's
okay. Good. Then next one, the functions MPI card dim get and MPI card get return the Cartesian topology information that is associated with the communicator. Dot. Yeah. Same as above. There is a d in front of already. Then it's fine. Good. Nothing to change. Okay, then we come to MPI card sub. There we have now the possibility that a communicator could be created with different other functions, also like nesting of MPI card sub and transferring this information. So changing this here at this place to carry all the stuff over. If a communicator has an associated Cartesian topology, MPI card sub can be used to partition the communicator group into subgroups that form lower dimensional Cartesian subgrids and to build for each subgroup of a communicator with the associated subgrid Cartesian topology. Yeah. And I still don't know why the diff is not complete here. I think there's missing like the function has been created with the function MPI card create. Yeah, that was the original one here.
On line 15, there is the word false. Is it a value or is it the real world false? Because in that case, we should put MPI code around it, like we did for true.
Yeah, I can check this, but I guess from the font, it's standard false. 15.
It seems to be a value because in the example following, you have the table remaining true, false, true.
Yes, I think so, but
Okay. Sonderlist, page, line 50.
And that's the last one.
Yeah, that's it. That should fix all the problems and allow the implementations to stay as they are.
The wording of that that sentence you've changed on this page still isn't quite right. It doesn't. Something's wrong with it. I think what I want to suggest is something along moving the sentence around a bit and saying something like MPI cart sub can be used to partition the group of a communicator that has an associated topology into subgroups that form something or other, that way round. Because at the moment it says if a communicator has a Cartesian topology, so I create one of those, then from there on, irrespective of whether I use that communicator or some other communicator, I can partition the communicator into some, it's a necessary but not sufficient condition as it's currently specified. It doesn't quite read right, and as we're changing it, we might as well fix it. So I can read that. I can say that again if you want, the sentence I'm suggesting, or I can just do it on the ticket.
Yeah, do it on a ticket. That's maybe.
Okay.
I see the problem here. Yeah. Yeah, if we don't have to touch this a second time, then it's better. Good. Okay, yeah. That's it. Then I will make the changes and update the ticket and send around an updated PDF then also.
Yeah, for the reading the updated PDF, and then we'll still merge it into the release candidate, right? Wesley, is that correct?
So that needs to go in. We'll probably be merging in the errata late this week.
Okay.
Okay, so that's everything on these two lists. I think the last one was the big count thing we already talked about. So as far as I know, these 8 issues here are the only ones we're tracking to get into MPI 4.0 as a forum. There will still be some changes that Bill merges as part of the kind of editor changes that he'll be making, but these are all of the larger ones. Is there anything anybody's working on beside that?
May I interrupt you? I want to give an answer to the question about how should we, which macro we should use for 2. And it's very clear, it should be const skip. \const skip should be used for 2. It is 50 times for 2 in MPI standard. Const skip is used 13 times, const 13 times, and MPI arc 24 times. But all result in source serif font. And the other methods are MPI code is 14 times, info skip 1, and info val 5. Therefore, the majority is in principle then source serif, and that's in principle the correct one is then const skip, because
so just
the skip is not going to the index, and therefore const skip.
So without wishing to make too direct a reference to certain elections that are going on, the popular result isn't always the one that wins. In the discussion we had with Bill for other editor pass changes, the correct response, the winner for true, would be MPI code, because it's a code thing. It is certainly not a constant, as in it is not an MPI constant, and it is therefore not correct to label it as a constant, even if you don't then index it. So there may be a lot of instances of that, but that's part of the editor pass to go through and change them to make them more consistent.
Yeah.
So
I thought the const skip is for non-MPI constants, whereas the const is for the MPI constants, because they are going to the index.
There's a clear rule, I have to say. I just looked up in the instructions document, and there is MPI code for language-independent true false values, and for language-dependent values, it's /code. And that's mentioned also under const skip, that it should be used the other one. So
Okay.
I would here, I don't know, should be open then an issue for all this in the overall standard? Maybe.
No. Only here. You are using now. That's what you think. What's the best?
Yeah, I would do it here, but we could do it for one. Maybe fixing it.
Yeah, yes, but here you are now using, instead of plain text, you are using one of these macros. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's somewhat unrelated to what you're doing in this particular PR. So you could skip it. You could just not do this and wait for the editor pass to fix all of the occurrences. Some of these were fixed in the way that I just described as part of attempting to do something else. I know because some of them were in the point-to-point chapter and I did them. It was actually trying to fix the MPI arg equals some value. And the whole phrase was fixed to be /MPI arg name, and then MPI code equals something or other for the language independent code, rather than whatever was there. So that's the preferred fix, but it wasn't a ticket that did the MPI code thing throughout the document. But there will be when Bill comes with his next set of changes.
Okay. Good. Sorry for the interrupt.
It's okay. It's worth clarifying, and it's also worth reminding about the instructions, and that those instructions have changed quite a lot over the last few months. Bill's been adding and clarifying a lot of the instructions, so that's worth everybody being reminded of that.
How's the procedure to fix typos and all this stuff in the procedure? Not with a pull request, just pinging Bill directly, or?
I think he would probably be fine with pull requests, because then he doesn't have to go re-implement whatever you're making, whatever changes you're suggesting. For things that are small like that, then that is probably sufficient. For very small typos and editor changes, if it's anything that goes beyond that, then we need to go through the full create an issue and
Okay.
That sort of thing. It may still end up that we say, well, that's a chapter committee change and it's not a big deal, but that's the general procedure. You can be safe and always make an issue, or if it's just typos, then just a pull request is probably fine. And then if Bill thinks it's more, then he'll probably kick you back out. Okay, so I think that's everything on the list. Anything else people want to discuss? Anything we didn't cover?
I think we're good, unless there's somebody else has something else.
Okay, I really want to go through my 10 to-do things.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I need the 5 minutes at the end with you, Dan.
Me, Wes, or Dan?
Wesley, yes. You.
Okay, got it. Okay, then let's go ahead and wrap up.
That's good. And thanks everybody, and we'll see what we do next week. We'll have to talk about that, but we'll send an email around.